Downtown Raleigh, a forest of tall buildings, concrete and steel everywhere you look. But hidden among these imposing skyscrapers is this small brick house on South Wilmington Street. It's not the kind of building you would normally notice. Who would guess that this house would reveal such a fascinating story of an African-American man and the times in which he lived? This is the Pope House, the only historic house museum of an African-American family in the state of North Carolina.
The Pope House was built in 1901 by Dr. Manasseh Thomas Pope and his first wife, Lydia Walden Pope, here on South Wilmington Street. It was lived in continuously by the family until the late 1990s and is now part of the Pope House Museum Foundation, which as its mission is attempting to save the house, restore it, open it to the public, and educate the public about this very important period in American history and Southern history.
Kenneth Zograi is a historian and executive director of the Pope House Museum Foundation. For the last few years, he has been piecing together the life and times of Dr. M.T. Pope.
The Pope House is a treasure trove because we found in it a remarkable collection of artifacts and documents that date back to 1851.
Some of these treasures include Dr. Pope's medical bag, the original piano and furniture, a locket with photos of daughters Evelyn and Ruth, the girls' dolls, and even hair combs and makeup worn by Dr. Pope's second wife, Delia Haywood.
It's a tremendously rare find on several levels. It tells the story of this lost century. Between the end of the Civil War and the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement. Then also, it's a story, again, of positive role models, of African-American family that was well-educated, that was successful in business, that educated their daughters. The women in the family were well-educated as well as the men. But Dr. Pope was also politically active in a period when we've been taught that African-Americans had no political voice. And in fact, this is one of the things that we want people, especially children, to take away from the house, that there were African Americans during the period before the modern civil rights movement who had a great deal of dignity, who were successful, well-educated, and who were trying to bring about change in society that later did occur during the modern civil rights movement.
Dr. Pope was born in this house in 1858 in Northampton County. He was born to free parents who were literate and landowners.
The oldest document we found in the house were Dr. Pope's father's 1851 Freeman Papers with the state seal of North Carolina, issued in Northampton County. What's particularly poignant about these papers is if you turn them over, you can see where they are creased on the back. Because Dr. Pope's father, even though he was a free man, he was a landowner, he owned quite a substantial home and land in Northampton County, he was literate. If he were caught outside of his home without these papers, he could be, according to the laws of North Carolina during the antebellum era, sold back into slavery. So these papers are in many ways a poignant reminder, even for a free black man, of the horrors, the evils of slavery during the antebellum era.
At the age of 16, Dr. Pope attended Shaw University and received his BA degree in 1879. He then entered the first class at the Leonard School of Medicine at Shaw and graduated in 1886.
And in 1892, Dr. Pope and his wife moved to Charlotte, and in Charlotte he established his medical practice. He also became a very active businessman. He established something called the Queen City Pharmacy, which was one of the most prosperous black-owned businesses in North Carolina in the 1890s.
Dr. Pope was one of the leading officers of the 3rd North Carolina Volunteers. This was a volunteer regiment established in 1898 during the Spanish-American War.
we have what we believe to be the largest collection of artifacts and documents that relate to this all-black regiment known to exist. We have remarkable things, including Dr. Pope's the commission into the regiment, the saber that he wore by his side, and probably most incredibly, his medical bag with all of the medications still in the vials. The story of Dr. Pope's run for mayor in 1919 is an amazing story, a unique story as far as we know in the Jim Crow South, and a story that to some extent challenges our understanding of history. As I said before, after 1900, most African American men lost the right to vote through an amendment to the state constitution. One of the amazing things, in fact, as far as I'm concerned, the most important document we found in the house was Dr. Pope's 1902 voter registration card. That really is what started me down the road of trying to understand who this man was and what he was doing. I was amazed because everything that I had studied said that that black men were not involved in the political process. And here we had this 1902 voter registration card. And then it became even more amazing when we found that, in fact, in 1919, Dr. Pope led a slate of African American candidates who ran for mayor and the city council offices here in Raleigh. This story had been lost. You cannot find it in any history book of North Carolina or of Raleigh. And as far as we know, this is the only incidence of an African American man running for mayor of the capital city of a southern state during the height of segregation. Dr. Pope is a fascinating man, one of these men who historians find fascinating because his life parallels a very important period of history, and through his life, historians can tell a much broader story about North Carolina history and Southern and the history of the South.
When it is all said and done, this is an African American success story about a North Carolina man who refused to be beaten down or accept second-class status because of segregation. He rose above his circumstances to become a successful businessman, family man, and community leader. It is in every sense an American story, a story of hope and perseverance.